be the team member you want to be.
Yeah.
Right? So what you expect from a team member from you, you should be that standard essentially. You can't be that lead that's lazing around and then you expect that your other team members to not laze around.
Yes.
Welcome to Kaka Computer. For today's episode, we'll be talking about leading technical teams. I'm John Bonso of Tutorials Dojo.
I'm Cleos, a Google developer expert for Firebase.
Hi, I'm Fran. I'm the CTO of Tutorial Labs as well as the co-founder of React.js Philippines.
And today we'll be discussing the effective strategies for leading technical teams with insights from experienced IT leaders like Cleo and Fran Ray. Alright, so first question. What's the biggest difference between managing technical teams and other types of teams? Cleo, would you like to start?
Sure. So, every industry, we manage different types of people, right? And the core of software engineering is really solving problems. So, the biggest difference is you want to keep these people interested in the problems that they're solving on a day-to-day basis. You have to give them tasks that are interesting enough to allow growth and at the same time to allow challenge. Kasi developers really love challenge. They love having their ideas turn into reality. They also want growth in terms of skill set because, even if front end ka, you can still, nothing's stopping you from learning back end or like doing full stack eventually. So that's one major thing. Like there's no one way path to actually like growing in terms of like your career and your skill set. So yeah, that's my take on that.
How about you, Frank?
Okay, so disclaimer, I haven't actually tried leading any other types of teams because in my career, I started as a software engineer and then I became a technical lead that led up to me to being a CTO, essentially. So all of those, unfortunately, are all technical teams. Unless if you count the org stuff I did na hindi technical team yung mga yun, basically. But for me, what I notice, at least for technical teams, they are more motivated towards, like what Leo said, it's more objective-based, right? So whenever we lead our stand-ups or our sprint meetings, we need to make sure that we have these objectives aligned for everybody, essentially. No matter what your goal is, everyone is there to collaborate, and we want these technical teams to grow their skill sets, as Cleo said, and we want them to be engaged, not just through the actual code itself and the technical challenges that you may face, but also the actual product, right? The actual product to get excited about, essentially. So it's very... I'm not so sure what's the difference of a non-technical team, but I really believe that, sharing the vision of the product, sharing the whys and the hows of the technical decisions, all of those take a crucial part for technical teams, essentially.
On that note, how can leaders create a collaborative environment that also encourages individual problem solving? So where you have collaboration at the same time, individual, self-initiative in solving tasks.
So I can start with that one. I have a very personal thing
go
with
ahead.
that, essentially. So if for the people who know me, I'm a little bit of a type A person when it comes to the actual code and everything that's happening around the code base, essentially. So as a leader, I've been viciously, well, not really viciously, but my mentors always say, always try to guide them towards the solution rather than you telling it outright, essentially. So that's the first step. If you're the leader or if you're the team lead, you need to be able to not just baby them or handhold them towards the end, because it's not for... I know your reasons because you want things to go fast, but that is not good for the future and for the days to come, because what will happen is you will have this hero complex, essentially, and we want to avoid that. Because being a hero means you need to, when you get sick or when you're not available, your team is not self-sustaining, and we don't want that to happen. So that's number one. As the leader, you need to be able to guide them towards the solution.
Not spoon-feed them.
Not spoon-feed them, essentially. That's basically the TLDR from that, essentially. And of course, have a, I don't know how to describe this properly, but you need to show your vulnerabilities as well. It's very important that you're not perfect, that you're not the grand maestro of everything, that you can solve everything on your own, essentially. So whenever you have your stand-ups, whenever you have your meetings, you need to let anybody else have an input. I may not be sure about this, something like that, right? And direct honesty actually helps as well, that I don't know this, I'm wrong. All of those stuff. Because we're in our career, and whenever you have a team lead, you have this sense that you need to be that infallible creature that everybody looks up to. But that's not the case, right? You need to be vulnerable, you need to be honest. And I really believe just open communication really helps with these kinds of problems, essentially.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
How about you, Cleo?
So for me, one way leaders can actually foster collaborative environment while still, like pushing for personal growth is having an open door. Like, I'm always one Slack call away from brainstorming, but I give liberty to my engineers to, like their thought process, how they actually approach a problem. But they have to consult. Let's say, okay, this is my solution. And what do you think of this? Okay, I can tell you five reasons why it will fail in production. Things like that. So, like your team, you're giving them the liberty to be creative on how they approach a problem, but you're also guiding them. You're teaching them best practices, and like they can see it from a task level to actually like the infra or application level. Like, what are the breaking points of my solution, or how will it scale? In terms of performance testing, will it actually survive the traffic? Things like that. So always have an open door, be approachable, because at the end of the day, you're not just in charge of the product itself, you're in charge of the people. So you have to be a people person and you have to be open to them. So, yeah.
So I think what I see here is the concept of empathy and honesty within the teams. So it will foster collaboration at the same time, of course, individual problem solving.
Yep.
Right. Okay, moving on. What's an effective way to handle setbacks and technical issues without demotivating the team? And I think for me, so again, for my company, I'm actually leading a team of 10 plus 5 or so interns. I think I would say Cleo is right. So these people, technical people, they want to be inspired. They want to build something significant, something they want to be excited about every day. So one way to handle setback is, I'll give you an example. For instance, you have one developer, and this particular developer is doing a feature, right? And this person had a blocker. It's blocked, and natatakot yung tao kasi hindi siya maka-move on, natatakot siya na ano. So what should you do? Should you minsan may deadline siya, tapos sa deadline niya sabihin na ay blocked po ako. That's a bad thing, right? So and of course as an executive, some people might fire that person on spot because you missed the deadline, especially if it's a mission critical thing, right? And it can cost a lot of money. So one thing about that is to handle it, as mentioned, I would go back on saying honesty within the team and empathy, right? So one thing is, for the team members, they should be open and honest. If they have a blocker on their end, they should tell the people, no? So also, as mentioned by Fran Ray, yes, of course, you have this hero complex, right? Some people, because they're actually quite afraid of telling that, hey, I messed up, this one. Why? Because probably the culture of the company is all of you are type A person, alpha male, no? Can't do nothing wrong, people, no? So yeah, as mentioned by Fran, you have to be human, no? And that's the truth, because we're not infallible people here. So I think that's number one. You have to be open and foster that culture within your company.
Yeah. So for me, effective way is one word: ownership. So yeah, you have to own everything that you do. One thing that could really demotivate the teams are like extending the project timeline, like missing milestone, missing deadlines, and like they say there's one thing that they always say, that software engineering is always late. To some degree, that's true, because requirements evolved, and sometimes we have like resources taken away from us. Let's say my sick leave, ganon. So we always have to own and to own things, so that we will know how to what's the next steps. Like we fail, but then what we can do to actually make up for this failure, and then also as a leader, it's important to inspire your team. Like if ever the upper management would cascade some like bad news to you, it's always your responsibility to also be transparent with your team, but at some point you have to foster that mindset of ownership to them.
Yeah.
Henry, anything to add?
For me, it's more objective, right? So there's really two parts of this. You already discussed, John, the first part, which is you should have that culture, you should have that structure that would actually mitigate the possible issues in the future. But let's say even after all of that, things went wrong. I mean, chaos theory suggests if something will go wrong, it will go wrong, right? So you really can't avoid that. So it's just a fact of life, unfortunately. So no matter what you do, no matter what you create, the most perfect solution, it will fail. In some form, some shape or form. For me, it's more the objective truth, right? You focused on the actual problem rather than whose fault it is, right? So that's why we have these postmortems. Like Leo said, there should be ownership. So whoever discovered, whoever the team, for me, it's just the team. It's the whole team rather than the individual. Because for a code to be shipped to production, it's not just one software engineer who does that. It went to review, it went to QA, it went to the product manager seeing your actual output, and then it went to DevOps, etc. It's not just one person, right? In a real software team, unless you're a freelancer, of course, but in the actual enterprise world, it's not just one person. So what we do is, the objective truth. What happened? What can we improve? How did we discover it? And everything that's the usual in the postmortem, essentially. And of course, the most important one, what did we learn, essentially? And how can we prevent this in the future? So that, if you recall what happened with, I believe it's GitLab, wherein an intern managed to purge a database, rather than his team members getting angry at him. What they did was, we should have probably had a better access management rather than an intern suddenly going to production and then being able to do that destructive.
Exactly. Proper training.
Exactly, right?
Applying best practices.
And that's how a company can grow, right? Rather than just getting angry at whose fault it is.
That's right.
You never grow that way. One way is for you to do these postmortems. Of course, learn. Essentially.
And on that note, I would like to thank, of course, you guys, or our viewers and sponsor as well. And as mentioned by Fran Ray and Cleo, to build that collaborative team, you also have to be technically capable and training, right? So Tutorials Dojo, thank you. My company also provide that training for you. We provide free courses from Amazon Web Services, and of course, free exam samplers for exam certification. So visit Tutorials Dojo at portal.tutorialsdojo.com. All right. So we have like 2 or 3 questions. So let's move on. How do you keep the team focused on long-term goals when they're working on complex projects with immediate demands? So how can you strike that balance between long-term goals and immediate needs, let's say incident reports or incident issues?
You might want to go first.
Okay, so it's kind of tricky for me because even though I'm the CTO, I'm a CTO of a firm-like environment. So long-term goals, although technically it exists, it's not going to translate to something what a firm does, because you finish the business that you're doing and then you ship it, right? So it's not really long-term, technically. You're more of a mercenary rather than someone maintaining a business, right? So for us, what we do is whenever we start this project, the long-term goals is essentially to keep the firm image good, essentially. To make it excellent, you always leave the customer wanting for more, something like that. Right? So that's our ever-arching long-term goal, because technically we don't have an actual long-term goal per business, right? Because it's very mercenary-like. Okay? You're like a freelancer, right? So for us, it's the name of the company. So on how do I keep the team focused on that? I always made sure that whenever we do our reviews, whenever they present their solutions, maybe it may be, we need to think about what will happen if this business or this specific product leaves our doors. Do you want how do we make sure that this product will be stable, wherein they don't suddenly come back in 2 weeks and said, oh, your app crashed, something like that, right? Because since the long-term goal is that the business or the image of the company will remain good and excellent, essentially, we have these standards whenever we ship code. So everything needs to go to a review. Someone has to review your work, essentially. And the person who is responsible to it is for them to make sure that whatever they deploy is up to our standards, essentially. It's just we don't really have a process wherein we review everything, because once it leaves your door, it leaves your door. Right? So it's not that, we're that kind of business, right?
Probably you, Cleo?
Yeah. So I've also worked in a firm throughout my career, but for the past 2 companies, I think it's more of like a product and service base. So I can probably give a perspective on that. So how do you keep your team focused on the long-term goals? Always instill in your team that, like the purpose of what you're doing, like it will outlive you. Like if it's a service that actually helps people, through financial services, you are the brand also of the product that you're making. Like whatever you do, it's affecting, no matter how small it is. Let's say you're just changing color for the logo or whatever, or like adding some user validations on the front end, but it's affecting a lot. When a user touches the product, right? Like, oh, I have a really nice user experience. So these are the things that would actually be instilled in their mind to keep them motivated. And in terms of like immediate demands, of course, like when we plan for a product roadmap, sometimes it just doesn't happen, right? Because there are like business requirements, and we always have to think as well that what makes this company run is actually profit, revenue. We still have to comply with the business requirements and still keeping the purpose of what we are doing. So yeah.
That's a very good perspective. Okay, on your final note, actually running out of time, it's a very good discussion that we have. So, very short advice. Final advice would you give for leaders aiming to build strong, motivated technical teams? For me, I guess I start. One is, I guess, just to be honest, you have to provide that guardrails to your company. Provide that continuous improvement, and just be open. Just being honest to yourself and to your team will really go a long way. So that's number one. I think that's the most important advice in my opinion. Honesty.
So for me, walk the talk. Like if you want your teams to be inspired, then be a person that's interesting. Like always keep learning, and then you're amplifying empathy towards the team. You're building a culture of engineering and creativity, and always building and shipping and really owning to things, and really sticking to like commitments and this type of thing. So yeah, be a good example and just walk the talk.
Nice. Final words.
For me, be the team member you want to be.
Yeah.
Right? So what you expect from a team member from you should be that standard, essentially. You can't be that lead that's lazing around, and then you expect that your other team members to not laze around.
Yes.
You emanate that kind of aura when you're the lead. So although technically stuff will still go wrong when it comes to people, and that's why you're the manager, right? Whatever your ethics are, whatever your standards are, you need to be able to promulgate that to your actual team members, essentially. And of course, like I said, always be vulnerable.
Yes.
Like empathy and everything. You're not perfect, essentially.
Good. Thank you so much.